What a disaster!
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, today I am going to share how I made my custom Necron trophies for my upcoming Dominion War tournament. And I can tell you now, this didn't go as planned. However, I'm happy with the end result. So stay tuned to find out what happened. For those of you who don't know, I run a yearly tournament, the Dominion War. It's designed for YouTubers to get together and play some games. Now, usually the tournaments are pairs because of the limited space at my place. We have 16 YouTubers. We make up pairs and have some fun, roll some dice. It's always a lot of fun. Now, usually I just buy some cheap sort of £1 trophies off of eBay. However, under the advice of 6 Plus Stevo, thank you Stevo, he thought it would be a good idea to have some custom made trophies. So that's what I went about making. Now usually we play the current 10th edition rules, whatever that may be, Pariah Nexus, etc. But this year I want to bring more fun to the tournament, and we're going to play my custom Necron Overlord rules. So I thought, if this tournament is called the Overlord Tournament, then how about having some cool Overlord trophies? However, how am I going to build Overlord trophies? I'm going to need 2 trophies for first place, 2 for second, 2 for third. I do a best army trophy and a runner-up trophy, so quite a few trophies. I did scour eBay to see if I could find some cheap Necron Overlords, and of course there was nothing. And then I thought about 3D printing, which I think was the obvious route. However, I don't have a 3D printer. I found a really cool sculpt that I thought would work well for the trophies. A slightly bigger scaled sculpt, a little bit sort of Silent King sized, but almost shaped like an Overlord. And I thought these would be really cool. So I contacted my good buddy Kevin from the Hobby Corner, who I know has a 3D printer, and asked him if he could help me out. Of course, Kevin said, yes, no problem. Kevin's been to quite a few of my Dominion War tournaments. He's a great guy, and in actual fact, he already offered, if I needed to do any 3D printing, that he would be able to help me out. So he very kindly printed a lot of these Overlords for me, more than I actually needed, which was very kind of him. So he sent them to me and I went to work on them. Now, one thing which is really cool about these miniatures is there are 2 different heads. One is more like the Silent King and the other one's more like a standard Overlord. So I thought if I use the Silent King heads on the winners' trophies, that will just make them look a little bit more special than the other trophies. I will need 8 trophies in total, 2 for first place, 2 for second, 2 for third, and then 1 for best army and 1 for second best army. I cleaned up all of the pieces. There wasn't too much cleaning up to do, to be fair. And then I glued them together, but I decided not to glue the staff onto the miniature. The staff can be glued in any direction that you wish. And I just wasn't quite sure where I wanted it, because as yet I hadn't got the plinths that I wanted to put them on. Now, as I said, I'm doing these trophies for my Dominion War tournament this year in August. It's going to be so much fun. I've got a list of all of the YouTubers which are going to be at the event. Don't forget to check out all of their channels, give them a sub just to support them, and also to see any of their videos that they're going to be making about the event. And as always, the event is sponsored. We've got 4 awesome sponsors this year. Our first sponsor is Loaded Dice, an awesome shop where you can buy all of your hobby needs. I've got an affiliated link in the description below. If you buy any hobby stuff, that's the place to buy it from. And if you use my link, then I'll get a little kickback when you do. We then have a Wargame exclusive. I've reviewed many of their fantastic models on the channel previously, and they do quite a cool range of Necron based miniatures, as well as loads of other miniatures as well. We've got a returning sponsor from last year who sponsored us for the first time last year, Morphic 3D, a fantastic company making really cool gaming accessories. I can't wait to see what he has for us this year. And then we've got Trident Futureworks, which make cases, really high quality magnetized cases to transport and also to showcase your miniatures. I've got a video linked in the description below where you can see me reviewing their cases. Okay, so back to the miniatures. I then glued them all onto their bases. We've got a really cool scenic base. It's a bit like Imatech the Stormlord's base, but it's got a Necron warrior coming out of the ground. Really cool. Okay, so next I had to work out what I was going to do with these miniatures in terms of a plinth to make them into trophies. I scoured the internet for plinths. At one point I found some really cheap plinths on eBay. However, they weren't there when I was ready to purchase. So I had to find a different place. I found a website called MDP, which is modeldisplayproducts.co.uk, and they had a good selection of plinths in all different shapes and sizes. So I worked out which ones were going to suit the models and I placed an order. I differentiated the best army trophies from the rest with a slightly different plinth. Okay, so next I glued the staffs onto the body, and now I had the plinth so I could visualize how they were going to look, so I could work out where I wanted to put the staffs. The staffs were quite tricky to glue on basically. I had to use blue tack just to sort of hold them into position whilst they were drying. It was a bit of a pain, but I got there in the end. So I had to think about how to paint these trophies. I didn't have time to sort of hand paint each one individually as an actual Necron character. I did have the little idea of maybe magnetizing the model so that it would come off and you could play it if you wanted to. However, of course, not everyone plays Necron, so I abandoned that idea and I thought I'll go with the traditional gold, silver and bronze for the trophies. Now originally I was going to spray the whole trophy, the base and the Overlord with gold, but I asked a few people, like my partner and some people at work, got their opinions, and the general consensus was that the plinth should be black and then the Overlord on the top be gold. So that's what I decided to do. Now regarding the paint, of course I could have hand painted gold and silver, but I thought it would be a lot easier just to buy a rattle can. Now of course Games Workshop sell rattle cans. I'm sure they probably would have a gold, silver and bronze, but they're quite expensive. So I went to my local B&M shop and I found some there, reasonable price, and they had the gold, they had the silver, and they had a nice bronze looking colour. Now these spray cans seem like they're going to do the job properly. They didn't have a bronze one, but they had a copper one which I thought would work well for that, and then of course a silver one and then a really nice gold one. So I took them outside and I sprayed all of the miniatures. I did spray them from all angles, including from underneath, just to make sure they were fully covered. I then sprayed all of the plinths with black paint, just a basic black paint all over. Okay, so next it's the text on the plinth. I wanted the plinths all to say Dominion War and then winner 2025 or second place 2025. There was a lot of text to be done. I did consider to hand paint the text, but I thought that would take a long time, and also I didn't know how good I would be at it. So the obvious choice was to put stickers on for the different letters. I had a look at my local art shops and they didn't really have anything, so I went to good old eBay. Now I could only get gold and silver lettering. I couldn't get a bronze coloured one. I thought I would just use silver on the bronze coloured one, so gold would only be for the winners' trophies. I thought I could live with it. I decided to use micro tape to stick onto the plinth as a guide to help me keep a straight line. And then I used tweezers to gradually stick on the letters. I'd already planned the size of the letters I bought so I could get 2 lines of lettering. The plan was to do the top line first and then work out how many letters are on the second line and try to place them in a central position so they fit nice and evenly. I was really happy with the end result. Now, the 2 best army trophies were thinner and taller than the others, so I used 3 lines of text as opposed to 2, and it works really well. Next, I superglued the Overlords onto the Plinths. I used a good amount of glue, but I made sure that I didn't go on the edges of the base, so that when I pushed them into place, the super glue wouldn't splay out of the sides. I then got some thin foam stickers from Amazon. Personally, I don't like supporting Amazon, but on this occasion I had no choice. I couldn't find them anywhere else. Okay, so they're almost done. Just one step left. I'm going to gloss varnish them to make them all shiny and pretty and new. So I took my gloss varnish, which I bought at B&M. I put all of the trophies on my board facing forward, ready to spray. I went outside and I sprayed them, and I looked closely, and this is not varnish, it's glossy black paint. What a disaster! It doesn't say gloss varnish, it says gloss finish, and it's black, and I'd ruined my trophies. Now, at first I thought I'd accidentally picked up the black spray paint, the primer, and accidentally sprayed them with that. But then when I looked at this, I thought, no, it's the right paint, it's gloss varnish. Or at least it's what I thought was gloss varnish. But yeah, I'd misread the label from gloss finish to gloss varnish. So it's actually a black paint that's shiny. Now, I'll be honest, I was pretty proud of myself because I didn't actually panic too much. I mean, I could have thrown an absolute hissy fit, but I didn't. I was actually quite calm. Maybe because we had a guest in the house, so maybe that was the reason why. But being calm actually really helped me think logically. I didn't panic. I just thought, well, it's happened. How can I rectify it? What are the options? Now, the first option which came to mind was, I'm just going to have to go back to my very original idea and just respray the whole of the trophy gold. And that way, all I have to worry about is the text. However, that text took me a very long time to put on. So the only 2 options would be to take that text off and redo it. And that meant buying even more sheets, or potentially to paint over the actual text itself. But either of those options just didn't seem quite right. Now, the guest that was in the house at the time came over and had a look at my disaster, and she said, they look pretty good to me like that. They just look like worn metal. I had a closer look and I thought, potentially they do look like worn metal. However, of course, I only had black at the front and not at the back. So I did something crazy. I took the models back outside and I resprayed them with this very gently on the back of the miniature so that I had the same effect around the miniature. Now, because I was spraying the correct way with this black paint, rather than sort of just going shh, just holding it down, I was doing it the proper way where you just go like that, just very gently, light sprays, and just build up the spray. The black wasn't actually too overbearing. There was 1 or 2 patches which was quite black. What I did is I got the silver, for example, and I held the base like so that my hand was covering the base. Then I got the silver paint. I just went over the areas that were just too black. So basically I evened up the gold, silver and bronze with the various paints. Now the writing itself had, of course, a black layer, a very light black layer over the top. So what happened was the writing was sort of dulled down a little. It wasn't as bright and shiny. It still looks pretty good though, and to be honest, if I hadn't made this video saying I'd made a mistake, you may have thought I'd actually done it like that on purpose. And when I compared them to the writing on the wooden spoons, which you might not be able to see very well because of the light, but the writing's really shiny, and on the trophies they're not really shiny, and I think generally they look better. So let's have a look at the end result. And there they are. I really hope you like them. As I said, it was a bit of a change of direction down to the little mishap, but I think overall it probably was a good change. It's easy to see that they are gold, silver and bronze. The writing is still readable, even though not as shiny as maybe I thought it was going to be. And of course the change of direction just meant I had to change my vision of these trophies. Rather than sort of bright shiny trophies, these are more dulled and rustic, let's say. I think the rustic look works well. However, let me know what you think of them in the description below. In the meantime, if you want to see last year's Dominion War tournament report, then there it is for you to watch next.